This is the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where it's all about getting the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. Brought to you by Itamar Shafir, founder and CEO of Umbrella, the technology platform and brand that is powering thousands of marketing agencies around the country. Find him at umbrellaus.com. Now, here's your host, Kevin Pruitt.
This is Kevin Pruitt with the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we talk to marketing experts about how to grow and scale a digital marketing agency. My guest today is a growth marketer who is obsessed with data and psychology. She's also passionate about helping companies skyrocket top-line metrics by identifying and leveraging customers' true buying motivations and implementing a data-driven method so they are 7 times more likely to convert. Currently, she's the owner and managing director of BedaBeda Growth, a science-backed conversion rate optimization firm. The BedaBeda Growth team is obsessed with using data, behavioral science, and psychology to create customized roadmaps for growth. They love using those roadmaps to take you and your company on the best road trip of your life. Join me in welcoming my friend and a great guest to the podcast, Kanika Misra. Kanika, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Kevin. And I will add a little of color to what's behind the name, right? Everyone always asks, and you pronounced it BedaBeda, which we get all the time. We pronounce it BedaBeda.
BedaBeda, okay.
Why do we say that? Little backstory there. One, we are originally from Boston, Massachusetts. So if you're ever talking to somebody from Boston and you ask them to say the word better, what are you going to hear? BedaBeda Growth. So that's
BedaBeda football too.
BedaBeda football. Oh, yeah, not lately.
Yeah.
And the other part of it too is my background. I'm an Indian American. My family has spoken Hindi for most of my life, and of course, when they grew up, and the Hindi word for bigger is bada. So it's kind of a combination of bigger, better growth. And
absolutely.
And
I thought you were going to go the Latin or something of like scale or something.
more the nice Boston accent and
there you go.
A little Hindi mixed in.
There you go. Yeah, that's a great combination. But so I read the bio. Let's round it out a little bit. Put some meat on the bones here. Round that out just a bit.
So who do we work with? What do we do? So we are a conversion rate optimization agency. So we basically help, make the actions that your users are already taking into more valuable actions for you. So in other words, even better, actually, we take the traffic that you're already driving and make it more profitable. So for a business owner, that's really what you want to figure out is, hey, I'm already getting 100,000 people to my site every single month. How do I take it from 1,000 of those people actually buying and turn it into 10,000 people actually buying? So we evaluate all of the little itty bitty moving levers all over your site, as well as on landing pages to assist with your paid traffic and figure out, hey, how do we make sure that every dollar you're spending doesn't only result in $1? How do we make sure that dollar results in $1.50 or $2 or $3 or best case $10 or $20, right?
So we can get into this later because I really want to kind of drill down later about more specifics. But I mean, you're not focusing on any specific social channel, or it could be anything. It can be
anything. So we kind of do a combination of two things. So with our CRO, we have site-wide CRO, and that is not for any specific channel, right? When it comes to your site, you have such a big combination of people that come there, right? It's new people who've never heard of you before. It's people who have come to your site 30 times before, but they've never actually purchased or taken the action that you want them to take. It's people who heard about you from their grandmother's best friend's, sister's dog. It's people who maybe saw you on a flyer and just remembered. It's people who Googled some other solution and you popped up. So there's such a smorgasbord of people that land on your site. So that one is not specific to any one channel. When it comes to landing pages, we also do landing page, builds and conversion rate optimization specifically on landing pages. And those all do have to do with paid traffic primarily, sometimes email and influencer traffic as well. But very, very primarily paid and mostly Facebook, Google, or more recently, things like, TikTok and,
right.
the new stuff.
Hey,
Snapchat.
TikTok may not be around much longer. I mean, that you
I
hear all
hear you. And
these
you know what? For
rumors
landing
of the
pages,
government shutting it down here. So
exactly. So for landing pages, that's one of those things. Like we typically don't say, hey, let's just build a ton of TikTok pages. One, who knows how long they're gonna last for you. And two, the people who are buying through TikTok, landing pages sometimes aren't the best fit because their attention spans are like,
yeah,
30
like a
seconds,
gnat.
man. Yeah, they're just like, all right, cool, okay, bye.
That's right. It's like, what was it? Was it Vine that had the 7-second video
Yep,
clips? It's like Vine on steroids. I mean, it just you're
basically.
flipping through, and
Nonstop.
hey, I'm guilty as anyone else, but
Oh, I
it
hear you.
we had
It's entertaining.
oh, no doubt. And I mean, it is also aiming at a specific demographic too, I think. And
Yep.
the certainly is capturing that demographic. But I had a previous guest on, we were talking about Facebook,
Mhm.
Facebook marketing
Oh, yeah.
specifically. And it was kind of a little pithy statement there at the end of our chat. It said, a product page for sale, landing page for scale. And I thought
Love
that was
it.
a really interesting, way to
I
kind of look at that
love
as,
that.
where they are in the funnel, where it is, where you're trying to lead people,
1
on the
million%.
site.
1 million%. I love that. I'm gonna start saying that. What is it? Product page for sale, a landing page for scale. It's great. And it's very accurate, right? Because landing pages, the reason that they pair very well with paid is because you're controlling the controllables versus with a product page, you're not. You have people coming through an ad and the context of that ad. What the hook is, what are the compelling pieces of it. Even further, if it's video or a format like that, exactly how long on average people are even watching it, so exactly what they have seen prior to clicking that has compelled them and said, that's interesting, now I want to find out more, right? So that's the goal of the ad. If you know all of that context, it's in everyone's best interest. It's in the customer's best interest. It's in your best interest as the brand. It's in your company's best interest just for sales. It's in your agency's best interest to make everything perform better, to continue that conversation from the ad. So hey, these people clicked because they were interested in XYZ. Now I'm going to, on this landing page, give them all the context for XYZ. So it makes sense to them why they clicked. It's continuing the conversation. Plus, I'm going to tell them all the other, pieces of information that might make them otherwise just bounce from my product page.
Right.
Because if you're talking sales, especially, it's not always the best use case for landing pages, but it is a use case that can be very easily understood. So think about the times that you're scrolling, and finally an ad catches you and it says 20% off. And you're like, cool, this looks interesting and I want 20% off. And then you click through and you land on a homepage and it doesn't show the product you're interested in, or it doesn't land you there, and it also doesn't say anything about the sale. And so at that point you're like, what the heck?
It's just
I'm
friction.
Out. Yeah. Why am I gonna waste my time here? There's 500 other brands I would rather go and peruse that bring me where I want to be.
And Google recognizes that too. I mean, Google recognizes in your traffic, that they're going to penalize you for that.
Yep.
Yeah,
exactly.
It is such an interesting, like, science of looking at websites and conversion in websites. So this is anecdotal at best. The idea that it seems like that some people are aiming, I guess, websites almost at kind of the TikTok mentality that says we're getting down to a one-page site. We're really reducing, the information, I guess, on websites. Have you seen that? And is that, I mean, how is your company responding to that?
Yeah, I think one-page sites are interesting, and I think they work for certain services or offerings, definitely. I think that it's very dependent on the complexity of your offer, as well as the price point of your offer, right? If you're offering something that costs more than, I would say, even like $250, having a one-page site is kind of tough, right? Like, you don't have enough.
Unless it's super simple. You're either buying a Tesla or you're not.
Simple, but
right.
maybe.
Yeah.
But I would say as a generalization, when anyone's spending any meaningful amount of money, and I would say for the majority of America, $250 is something that you're not going to just think for 1 second about, right? You need a little bit of time. And a one-page site, unless it's like this massive, endlessly scrolling site, it's not going to give you the information that you need to make that educated decision without thinking about it for days and days and days, and obviously most likely forgetting about it.
Yeah.
So I think there's places for it. But at the same time, like if you're going to have a one-page site, then almost the more reason why you need landing pages if you're driving to it, because you need to customize those pages for the different experiences, because one page is not going to answer the questions of 5 or 6 or 7 different personas or 5 or 6 or 7 different channels.
Right. That's a great example. It is more than just a landing page. I mean, you've got to lead them somewhere. You got to lead them to being able to answer the questions on their journey for sure. But tell me from, in your company's standpoint, who is like an ideal client for you, and who do you partner with a lot?
Yeah. So, couple different types. We don't, discriminate a whole lot, but typically folks that we work with, say they're in the e-com. We work with both e-commerce and SaaS companies, mostly consumer facing. A big reason for that is B2B sales cycles can be so long that it's very difficult to measure. With that, generally speaking, B2B software companies don't have a super high volume of traffic every month, right? Unless you're really like enterprise kind of scale,
right.
That can be difficult. And then kind of third actually on that is many of them need like a sales process, as part of that conversion step. So sometimes we can work with that, right? And we can help get more conversions, meaning more people booking a demo. That's doable. Other times, if it's so drawn out and there's too many players, it becomes very difficult to actually measure the value there, because 1 out of 10,000 are going to be valuable.
Right. Right.
So B2B is typically not the best bet, but I'm not going to say it's never a good fit. It's if they have a high volume and the action that they're going for is something that's measurable on the site, like a sign up or book a demo. Outside of that, our best fit are typically e-commerce brands who are doing between 7 to 9 figures every year. Niche doesn't really matter, to be honest. We worked with baby products, dog products, car products, everything that you could name, like weird things, very normal things, big commodities. We worked with a lot of them. And then on the SaaS side of things, again, typically B2C SaaS is kind of where we shine. So any sort of consumer facing platforms are who we like to work with on the kind of company and brand side. In terms of agencies, we also partner with a lot of agencies. Typically those who are running paid media programs are the ones who benefit the most, because frankly, at the end of the day, we make their job easier, right? And it was a big inspiration for me, and it was a big motivation for me as a former media buyer myself, to start and really get this CRO agency off the ground, and not only that, but make it a focus point for us to partner with other paid media agencies. Because what I realized was media buyers and paid media agencies, they are judged on the overall results of their efforts, but they can only control 50% of the entire funnel, right? So they can do all of the creative testing, and they can do the segmentation, and they can do all of that in the kind of the front end. So they're getting the ads and getting people to click. But as soon as somebody clicks, the post-click journey is out of their control completely.
Right.
They're going to a different site, or they're going to a landing page, and these media buyers aren't doing anything there, but they're still judged on the final conversion, which happens in that gray area. And back in 2019, before starting this, I talked to so many agency owners, and I said, why is it that you're not doing more afterwards? And there's kind of 3 answers that buckets, I guess, that the answers could all be dropped into. One was, I just don't have the expertise. CRO and post-click, all of that it's a different kind of world. Like I know enough to be able to make some educated guesses, and I'm not completely clueless there, but it's not where I could be an expert. makes sense, totally makes sense. And especially now, as I've gotten farther and farther away from doing paid media myself,
Mm-hmm.
the new stuff that they're doing, I have no idea with, which brings me to my second kind of bucket. A lot of them said, Kanika, I just don't have interest in it, right? Like my interest is in doing that sexy ad work.
Yeah.
You know, I like to think of the hooks and I like to think of the creative and I like to do that part that gets people bought in initially. That's fair. I used to be a media buyer. I get it. It is the more attractive, the more kind of, you know, blitzy, blingy part of advertising. But for me, I'm not interested in it anymore. So I can understand that fully. The third part about it was, hey, you know what, my clients, they don't feel comfortable with anyone else touching their site. You know, they want control of it.
Mm-hmm.
I said, okay, that's fair. Sometimes that's something that we're not going to be able to work around. So especially when we're doing site-wide CRO, if they don't want anyone touching their site, that's going to be difficult.
Right.
That being said, landing pages, if you don't want it to be built on your site, we can do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can use third-party builders, and we do that quite a bit. We can use these other builders, and it won't touch your site, right? We're not going to break anything, and we can still do this meaningful work to help improve your conversion rates, and we're not going to ruffle your feathers.
Right.
So those ended up kind of being those three main reasons why other agencies don't focus in CRO. And I think, you know, probably the biggest one of them is they just don't have the expertise or the resources to do it well. And so who we partner with ends up being paid media agencies. Sometimes, you know, they do other things. Sometimes they're more like a full stack agency where they handle influencers and creative and social and all that stuff, organic social. But they are typically working with the companies I named earlier. So they're agencies who are working with e-com brands doing 7 to 9 figures a year, or B2C SaaS companies who have kind of a direct sign up process.
I mean, that is such a comprehensive little journey we just took there in that answer. And you've answered so many different things, you know, that, and I want our listeners to, if you didn't get all of that, I want you to rewind about 5 minutes and go listen to that again. But when you talk about conversion,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is sales. And that's just what just comes to mind immediately. But I also think that, I mean, is it also true that if I want you to generate leads, that there's also a conversion in that aspect as well, that says, all I want you to do is make sure that I'm getting the leads that I can, you know, my sales dev team can follow up on, or I can follow up on, or whatever. Are you also in that stream as well?
Yep, 100%. So that's kind of where I was getting with B2B companies. You know, as a generalization, they're not often, you know, the best fits. That being said, if you do have the volume, kind of to your point, right? If you have a significant volume, if you're getting, you know, multiple thousands, if not tens of thousands of people to your site or to your landing page every month, then absolutely, we do work with teams who their goal is to get leads or to book demos, right? And the same processes apply to those. We need to make sure that we are answering the questions that leads might have before they're comfortable submitting their information. We need to make sure they understand what they might be getting themselves into. I mean, heck, we just launched a landing page test with an enterprise company out in San Francisco, and their whole thing is getting leads, which are really booking demos for a product that they are selling, which is again, an enterprise product that is servicing company offices. You know, they provide kind of food and nutrition types of services to other big corporations in the area. And they hired us to help make sure that all the Google ads that they're spending tons of money on are not going to just go to their standard, you know, sign up form that they have on their site, which is converting okay, but not great. But the new one that we launched right now, it's almost 4x their conversion rate. So that means the money that they're spending on those Google ads ends up going that much further,
right?
Because we're able to optimize.
And with the, you know, companies out there that are kind of the, you know, that are driven by measuring, you know, the results.
Yep.
It is such a, I mean, every month it seems like it's getting more and more accurate, you know, on what you can measure and the real-time results that you can, you know, kind of apply to what you're doing. So you're like, you don't have this lag anymore that says we got to wait 6 months to see if this works, or we got to wait 3 months or whatever. It truly is almost real time.
Kind of. Yeah. I would say the most frustrating part with CRO is that it's not like paid media, right? With paid
Right.
media, you can launch ads and you generally have an idea if they're working within a few days, maybe a week. With conversion rate optimization, any test that you run, the absolute minimum that you're going to run test is going to be 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks is pretty short for most companies that are in the range that I talked to you about, 7 to 9 figures.
Right.
Once you're in the 10-figure plus range, or if you're just spending or you have a huge budget to put against traffic, then yeah, maybe you can just get away with running tests for 2 weeks. But on standard, most of our partners, the tests that we run are running for 4 weeks at a time. Sometimes you need 6, right? Especially if you're testing ABC, you're testing multiple variants, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. It's not a 6-month thing. It's not a 1-year thing. Like you can get the data, and even if it's not conclusive after a few days, it's helping you optimize. It helps you make the decisions, and it helps you, most importantly, identify the patterns that will help you in.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I was focusing more on the results than the actual test.
Okay,
the test, could take, it's an indeterminate amount of time. You determine how long you want to run, this test, or how long you want to run this campaign or whatever, but as far as the results are coming, you're not having to wait.
It's not like you're waiting for snail mail to come back and tell you
here we go.
Didn't. Yep. Yeah. So the reliability takes a little bit of time, but just the fact that you can see anything and get kind of those indicators early on, it's awesome.
So you've been in this space for a little bit. You actually migrated, through like maybe your ideal customer's eyes, and sitting in their seat, to get to where you are. But is CR becoming a little bit of an exact science? Do you see that you can kind of replicate some things, and it's a little bit formulaic, might be that you figured some things out?
Yeah, I would say, the process itself is, and I think our process, again, I'm going to toot our own horn, but I think we're the only ones doing the process in terms of landing page testing that is the way that we do it. But at the end of the day, I'm a very firm believer that if you follow the process and if you do it correctly, you will win, right? Because the whole process surrounds learning at every step. So if you're running a test, you need to have a hypothesis behind it. And I think CRO has more recently, within the last year or two, kind of become a little bit commoditized. People are subscribing to the idea that you can just kind of take best practices and test them and see how it goes. But the problem with that is, one, best practices they're exactly that. They're good practices, but they don't typically apply. And
it's honestly, a better word, good practices versus best practices.
They're good practices. And more times than not, you'll try a best practice that worked for a company that has very little similarities to your own, and it's not gonna fly, right? Other times, you'll try a best practice and the company on paper might look exactly the same as your own, but at the end of the day, you have different audiences, right? You have different customers, and the behaviors and expectations and the positioning that you have is different in the market, which means that their best or good practice is not at all going to translate over to your brand. So unfortunately, though, I think that it's a hack, right? A lot of digital marketers and society have become obsessed with hacks these days. And so I think in that sense, it's become a little commoditized, where folks will just go and get a list of best practices for product pages or home pages or whatever it may be, and just start testing them. And sometimes they'll win, sometimes they'll lose, and it'll just repeat the cycle.
And maybe not know why it was either successful or not successful.
That's exactly it. If you don't have a hypothesis behind the test that you're running, or if you're not paying very close attention to what exactly you're learning from, a failed test, or even a test, right? You're not going to really have a structured direction to go in, and you're never going to be able to replicate those wins. So in the process that we use, where we have hypotheses behind every experiment that we run, and where we are capturing insights and actual learnings from every experiment that we run, it means that there's going to be, by the time that we run a test 2 or 3 or 4 times, there's going to be a list of, hey, this audience does not respond, or does not like, or does like, or really needs X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Therefore, these things are going to work, right? If you don't have that kind of systemized approach, you're never going to know. You're never going to figure it out. And that means, yeah, you can spin your wheels forever. But the benefit of working with experts who have a process, who have kind of a track record, is that one, they know the process, they know how to use it. And two, even better, they know how to prioritize it, right? Because you could instead be spending your first 6 months and, many thousands of dollars on building out these tests that maybe only get you incremental wins if you win.
Right.
Versus if you work with somebody who knows how to prioritize, hey, maybe, maybe it takes a couple months still, but those wins are going to so far, outsize the time and effort it took into it. That's a win in itself.
Yeah. We're all bombarded with like ads, of people that are selling courses. And I'm thinking, you did one thing that was semi-successful, and now you're an expert in the field and you're selling a course on how to do CRO. And I'm like, you don't even have a track. It's like a 21-year-old life coach. I mean, it's like, you got to live some life before you can actually coach, that
That's
type of
it.
thing. So
that's exactly it. Yeah.
It is full.
I'm nervous for folks like that are in CRO for when they finally get a well-optimized site, right? Because it's easy if you're working with clients who are pretty badly optimized. You're gonna hit a gold at some point.
Yeah.
But those are really hard to find sometimes, or they're hard to discern just from the naked eye. Like there can be sites that look horrible. Like you and I would look at it and be like, oh my God, there's so much opportunity here. Like this site is the worst. and then you go in and even like using data and analytics and doing the right thing, you realize like, holy crap, these things that we just thought from a best practice standpoint completely didn't work. So now if you don't have the process to then start really zeroing in on how do you actually get progress from there, you're so screwed. And we've encountered that, right? Like we've worked with a couple of clients at this point who we were like, wow, this site is terrible. Like there's we're gonna win right away, right out of the gate. We're gonna get some big wins. And we ran tests for a couple of months and we were like, holy moly, these did not go the way we thought they did. And it makes no sense. Like this is the weirdest thing, because this experience on paper seems horrible. And then this experience seems incredible on paper, right? It makes everything more simple. But for some reason, that first experience is still preferred and still working better than what we came up with. And, at that point, it's when you're looking at the data and saying, oh, wow, this is very specific to that audience. And, these are the things that they respond to. So now we need to come back and kind of look at their things that we thought were bad and use them to our advantage. And that's how, for both of them, we ended up turning it around. But it took a couple months, and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to think that you got it in the bag and you don't. And I think for folks who haven't kind of had the time experience to go through those situations, it'll be a learning lesson at the end of the day.
It always is. It always is. It's interesting that, I could look at a site and I could say, hey, your content's bad, the navigation's bad on the site, you're confusing me, there's friction on there. But at the end of the day, product market fit is so important.
Yep.
I could have the best optimization on the planet and still not sell anything because my audience doesn't exist, or the product doesn't fit their need, or whatever. Is that also part of your process? Is really, number one, let's just take a step back and just make sure that we actually have an audience and we actually have a need, and that this product fits that need.
Absolutely. I think a big part of that is just the fact that the size of companies that we typically work with, they've gotten to the stage where they've sort of proven out.
Already figured that out. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's why it makes it very difficult. Like as much as we'd love to work with companies who are smaller, because that's where we came from. We're a bootstrapped company. And, my background is always in startups, and, I've tried a couple of startups on my own. I get it. But unfortunately,
there's no money there either.
there's no money there. That's true. You're not wrong. And getting to that certain point where it makes sense is honestly just that much harder, right? It takes that much more effort than it does once you've proven out product market fit. But yeah, frankly, like running tests when you don't know if you even have the right positioning or the right product. It's like, you can polish a turd for how long, but it's still a turd at the end of the day.
At the end of the day.
And
Chad, just briefly right before we hit the record button about, metrics, and is there, in your opinion, a more important metric to measure than conversion?
I think your bottom line, right? Profit. Profit is more important. I mean, again, it depends on your longer term goals. What's your exit strategy? What's your funding source? But I would say for most brands, we work pretty heavily with e-commerce, so that's kind of where my brain is right now in this conversation. But yeah, profit would be the more important metric. Outside of that, though, at the end of the day, right? Like if you're scaling, you're using paid ads. Right? You're not scaling just from organic means. And the reality of the situation is that traffic is not getting any cheaper, and it's almost definitely not going to get any cheaper. So the only way to really compete at this point, or to continue competing as you grow, is to become more efficient. And if you can't become more efficient, then you are eating your bottom line every single day. So as a favor to your bottom line, to your profitability, you should be looking into how do I make each marketing dollar that I spend that much more efficient.
Right.
And, that's where we come in.
I love the way that you kind of framed that, and of course, like a true entrepreneur. Well, actually, I'm going to go to the bottom line first. I mean, that's where I'm really concerned. But yeah, that was not in my equation. I hadn't factored.
That's okay. I mean,
it's like an assumption, I think.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is like, sadly, I don't think that enough. I hate that I have to say it, but I don't think enough of entrepreneurs think about the bottom line as much as they think about the top line. And truthfully, I do think that has to do with your experience a little bit, right? Like I started in the VC-backed startup world, so bottom line was not something that I thought about very often at all, right? I was in tech, I was in SaaS, and we had venture funding, and so in order to get more investment, it wasn't protecting our margins, it was growing our top line. So for us, and for those kind of fields and people in those situations, like, yeah, profitability isn't necessarily what a lot of them are thinking about, or what a lot of CMOs are thinking about. They're thinking about, how do I increase the number of users I have signed up, or how do I increase my overall revenue, or folks whose exit strategy is just to get bought up by a big aggregator. Okay, cool, like, that might make sense. But I think more recently, over the last 4 or 5 years, speaking to the brands that we partner with, a lot of whom are bootstrapped, which is very different than kind of tech and SaaS. Profitability is something that is so important, especially this year. After the boom of the last 2 years, this year's been a tough year for a lot of brands, and a lot of them are folding, and because they didn't watch their profitability enough. And as everything got more expensive, they couldn't hold it down, and it's the sad reality of it. But for any entrepreneur, for any agency owner that might have their own brand, think about bottom line first, right? And then start thinking about, how do I optimize that, and how do I balance that with top line growth?
Man, what a way to kind of wrap up this segment that we really wanted to talk about, your company and the services they provide, and who the ideal client is, and even things that you see like in this space, with aiming toward marketing agencies, like this is the things that you need to be thinking about. And it's a perfect segue to our next phase of the chat here. And this is kind of my favorite. You're going to think these are a bit disparate questions here, but there's a method to the madness of.
I'm ready.
So I'm going to ask you these questions. These are rapid fire questions, just rapid fire answers. Okay.
Okay.
So here we go. Did you get along with your parents growing up?
Yeah.
I love it. That is so often the answer. Yeah, maybe. Mom maybe listen to this later. That's right.
Yeah.
That it is a qualified, absolutely. Yes, for sure. Do you have siblings?
None.
Do you have a pet?
I do. A puppy.
A puppy. Kids?
I have no kids. Nope.
What time do you wake up in the morning?
Oh man. More recently, like 7:30. Sleeping in a bed.
And go to bed?
Go to bed around 10:30.
So where is your ideal vacation spot?
Oh man. Ideal vacation spot, New Zealand. I've been there. I love it. I'd go back.
It's a long way from anywhere.
It's a very long way from
a
anywhere, but
long
God,
trip.
it is heaven on earth.
How does faith affect how you live?
I think it drives values, it drives decision making, and I think that faith, no matter what your kind of denomination is very important for everything and how you conduct your life.
What is one thing that you would change about the current business climate if you could?
Ooh, interesting one. So actually this applies to agency owners pretty well. And I think one thing I've been noticing more and more is there's always been a conversation from brand owners or company owners that say, hey, I hate agencies and they don't care enough about us. And, you know, they put their own profits and all that above our own, and that's it. And, you know, I think that that's true of some agencies, as it's true of any business. You know,
Right.
there's going to be bad eggs and good eggs. But what I've been thinking about a lot more recently is the fact that it goes two ways. And, you know, I'd like to think that we are a fantastic agency partner. And the saddest part is realizing when one of your brand partners who you have bent over backwards for because you are happy to do it, you appreciate them and you want them to win. And, you know, you think about them in the shower and you help with stuff that's way outside of the scope that you've been hired for because you want to. But when they kind of prove that they're out for themselves a lot more than they're out for you. So when the value of the relationship isn't returned, you know, when there's not parity there, I think that is something that I would like to change. And I would like for it to be more understood that it's a partnership and it's not a, you know, dictatorship.
I mean, I love the way you wrap that up. That is so important. And it is, I mean, you go back to, it's the golden rule, you know, it's the, you know, treat others the way you want to be treated, you know, that type of thing. And just, we do need a lot more heart in the business world today, for sure. Heart and courage and character, you know, in that space, for sure. But so if there's one way that you would want to close this out, like something I haven't touched on, or just wrap us up today with a closing thought about this whole space, about the marketing space, and just any way you'd like to kind of tie a bow on this.
Yeah, I think the best way I can tie a bow on it is just remind people that it's your job at the end of the day to create the best experience possible for your customers. And it starts with the very first time they hear about your company, and it never really ends. So it goes from when they hear about you to when they click on your ad, to when they click through to that next page that they land on, to when they go through the buying process or they go through the sign up process, to when they start using your product, and then to the point where they start telling their friends about it or using it regularly or whatever that follow-up is. And it's your job as a company to make each stage of that as perfect and wonderful and meaningful as possible. And if you do that, then everything that comes into that picture is going to be a success. And that means that you are doing your job as a company, your partners, your agencies, they're doing their jobs and they're thriving. And most importantly, your customers are happy and successful in the ways that you are trying to make them.
And it is so much more comprehensive than just conversion. It's so much more than just the bottom line sale. I mean, it is retention, it is employee retention, it is PR, it's brand value, it's reputation.
It's the whole thing. It's the whole thing.
Comprehensive thing.
Yeah, I used to be, you know, again, I came from the performance marketing space. I'm a performance marketer at heart, and I used to really question the brand thing. And you know what I've realized over time is that there's a through line from brand all the way to the end result, whatever that is, and if it even exists. I don't know if I'm convinced that there's an end to the customer relationship. But you know, with CRO and with kind of post-click particularly, I used to, you know, 2 years ago and before that, up until 2 years ago, and maybe even last year, I used to introduce CRO as the ugly stepsister of performance marketing, right? Because most people in e-commerce specifically did not understand it at all, right? They had no idea what CRO was in general whatsoever. And I came from SaaS, and that's a big reason I leapt into e-com, was because all of these strategies and methodologies that I would use in SaaS and brought so much success to the companies that I was with, were not being utilized at all in e-commerce. So I started testing it and I realized, holy crap, these work so well. But then my big battle then was no one knew what it was, right? It was brand new.
Yep.
So it was a constant, education thing. And, with CRO kind of being that ugly stepsister, people are so exhausted by the time that it comes to their site experience because they've done emails and they've done ads and segmentation and positioning and creative and all of this stuff. By the time that people click on it, they are so tired that they're like, my site just has to be good enough. Like I cannot put the effort and the time and the resources into doing what is required. Right. And for us, we're doing heat mapping and video recordings and, click maps and data analysis and, all of these things. But that's a lot. It's a lot to do. And I think what I've realized over time is that as much as we know that it's our duty on the post-click and CRO side to make that experience on the site or on the landing page as incredible as possible to get them to buy or to sign up or whatever, it's equally as important in every step before, in every step after. So brand has this journey because they have to set up those expectations in the best way possible.
Yeah.
They have their role. Ads, same thing. They have to make sure people are interested. Our role, making sure that people continue to be interested and are interested enough now to actually finish the process. And then customer service and retention come after that. So they make sure that after they have done what we want them to do, they are continuing to produce that perfect experience for people that allow them to be, true proponents of your company or your brand. And that really is that bottom line driver of future and sustainable growth.
And you're creating, you're nurturing that client base to create raving fans. I mean, Apple was a master, at that for sure. But what a way to wrap us up today, Kanika. Thank you so much once again for just joining us on the Marketing Umbrella podcast, the podcast where we talk to marketing experts to help you, the agency owner, grow and scale your business. Our sponsor is umbrellaus.com. Just stop by and tell Itamar Shafir, the podcast creator, hello. And Kanika, thank you again. We really appreciate you coming on.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate you, Kevin. And catch me on Twitter if you want, guys.
All of those contact information will be on the show notes. So Kanika, have a great weekend.
You too. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to another great episode of the Marketing Umbrella Podcast, where we provide the information you need from successful leading marketers to build and grow your digital marketing agency. To learn more, go to umbrellaus.com.